If you've spent any time in the world of spirituality, self-discovery, or the quieter corners of the internet, you've likely come across her name. Dolores Cannon. Author of 17 books, creator of the quantum healing hypnosis technique, a woman who claimed to have accessed memories of past lives, not just from this century, not just from this continent, but from worlds beyond our own. Her books have been translated into over 20 languages. They are read in Russia, in Brazil, in Japan, in homes where people sit alone at night wondering, is there more to this life than what I can see? She spoke of reincarnation with such ease, such certainty, that she made the extraordinary feel normal. Like she was describing something she had simply remembered, not invented. But here is a question we rarely ask. Who was Dolores Cannon before she became Dolores Cannon? Not the author, not the hypnotherapist, not the woman who spoke with Nostradamus, but the girl, the young woman, the wife, the mother, the human being who had no idea what was about to happen to her life. That is the story we are here to uncover today, here on Moments of Peace. Not the legend, the person behind it. And what we find might surprise you. Because the most extraordinary thing about Dolores Cannon is not what she discovered, but how she discovered it. Let's go back, way back, to 1931. A girl is born in St. Louis, Missouri. Her name is Dolores Eileen Taylor. Nothing about her childhood suggests she will one day change the lives of thousands. She goes to school, she grows up. She does what girls did in that era. In 1951, at the age of 20, she marries a young man named Johnny Cannon. He is in the Navy. And so begins the next 21 years of her life. Picture this, a young wife raising 4 children, moving from base to base, following her husband's postings across the United States and sometimes overseas. She is a Navy wife. Her world is her family. Her duty is to keep things together while her husband serves his country. There is nothing wrong with this life. It is honourable. It is difficult. It is, in many ways, the life that millions of women lived in the 1950s and 60s. But it is not a life that prepares you for what comes next. Have you ever had the feeling that your life was waiting for something? Not in an unhappy way, just waiting. Like a book with a beautiful cover, still unopened. You know there is a story inside, but the right moment to open it has not yet arrived. That was Dolores in 1968. She did not know it, but the door was about to appear. Johnny Cannon, her husband, was an amateur hypnotist. A hobby, nothing more. One day in 1968, a doctor asked the couple to help a patient who was struggling with an eating disorder. Simple enough. Hypnosis for weight control. Routine. But during the session, something happened that neither of them expected. The woman began to describe a scene, not from her own life, not from her childhood, but from a different time entirely. She spoke of being a flapper in Chicago in the roaring 1920s. Her voice changed. Her mannerisms changed. She was, for all practical purposes, someone else. Now, remember where we are. The year is 1968. There is no internet. There is no New Age movement. There are no books on past life regression in the local library. The concept of reincarnation is, for most Westerners, something vaguely exotic and vaguely suspicious. And yet here it was, happening in front of them. Over the next several months, Dolores and Johnny worked with this same woman, regressing her through 5 distinct lifetimes, all the way back to what she described as the moment she was created. They documented everything. They had no framework to understand it, but they knew, they felt, that something real was being revealed. It would take Dolores decades to fully understand what had happened in that room. But first, life had other plans. Later that same year, Johnny Cannon was driving to the naval base when a drunk driver hit his car. The accident was catastrophic. Johnny survived, but he would spend the rest of his life in a wheelchair as a partial amputee. The man who had introduced Dolores to the world of hypnosis, the man who had been her partner in discovery, was now completely dependent on her care. The family moved to the Ozark Mountains in Arkansas. They had little money. They lived on Johnny's military pension. Dolores became a full-time caregiver while raising 4 children. And the hypnosis, the strange, inexplicable discovery they had made, went into a drawer. Not forgotten, but silenced. Have you ever had a dream that life forced you to put aside? Not because you stopped believing in it, but because reality demanded something louder. Bills to pay, people to care for, a body to heal. And you told yourself, later. When things settle down, when I have time. For Dolores, later meant years, almost a decade. And here is the question that haunts me. How many of us, after years of silence, would have the courage to reopen that drawer? In the late 1970s, Dolores returned to hypnotherapy. Not because someone invited her, not because the world was ready, but because she could not ignore what she had seen. She began working with clients again, one by one, in a small room in Arkansas. She was completely self-taught. There were no courses, no certifications, no community of peers to validate her findings. So she became her own teacher. Here is something I find remarkable. When clients described past lives, specific times, specific places, Dolores did not simply take notes and move on. She researched. She spent weeks studying the history of the periods they described, the food people ate, the clothes they wore, the money they used, the social norms they followed. She wanted to know if what they described matched what was historically documented. Again and again, it did. She developed her own method over years of practice, what she would later call the quantum healing hypnosis technique. She began to notice that the information coming through her clients was not coming from their conscious minds. It was coming from something deeper, something wiser, something she came to call simply the subconscious, a vast source of knowledge that existed beyond the individual personality. It took Dolores Cannon 9 years to get her first book published. 9 years of rejection, of silence from publishers who didn't know what to do with her work. Finally, in 1989, Conversations with Nostradamus was released. Think about that for a moment. Not because she wasn't writing, not because the material wasn't there, but because publisher after publisher said no. The topic was too strange, too niche, too controversial, too uncomfortable. Let me ask you something. When you hear that someone spent 9 years being rejected, what do you imagine? Do you imagine someone who grew bitter? Someone who gave up? Someone who started doubting themselves, wondering if the world was right and they were wrong? Dolores did something else. In 1992, she founded her own publishing company, Ozark Mountain Publishing. She decided that if no one would open a door for her, she would build her own. This, I think, is the moment where the legend meets the human, because it would have been so easy to stop, so easy to interpret the rejection as a sign that she was mistaken, so easy to let the world's no become her own. But she didn't. And here is the beautiful irony. Ozark Mountain Publishing went on to publish over 50 authors from 4 continents. Dolores' own books were translated into more than 20 languages. She became a best-selling author in Russia and Eastern Europe, places where the appetite for spiritual exploration was immense and unashamed. The door she built for herself became a door for many others. Dolores Cannon passed away on October 18, 2014, in Fayetteville, Arkansas. She was 83 years old. But the work did not stop. Her daughter, Julia Cannon, had worked alongside her for years, first as a registered nurse in intensive care, then as a student of her mother's technique. Today, Julia leads the Quantum Healing Hypnosis Academy, teaching her mother's method to students around the world. What Dolores left behind is more than a technique, more than the books she wrote, more than a publishing company. She left behind a way of being in the world. And this is what I want to sit with in these final moments. Not the extraordinary claims, not the controversies, not the things that make headlines, but the person. What did Dolores Cannon teach us? Not through her books, but through her life. She taught us patience. 9 years of rejection, and she did not become bitter. She became resourceful. She taught us humility. She spent decades verifying her clients' stories instead of assuming she had all the answers. She knew what she did not know. She taught us courage, not the loud, dramatic kind, the quiet kind. The kind that shows up at a small room in Arkansas day after day with no guarantee that anyone will ever listen. She taught us that our circumstances do not define our destiny. She was a Navy wife in the 1950s. No one expected her to become a voice for millions. And yet she did. Not because the world cleared a path for her, but because she walked anyway. There is a saying in the spiritual traditions of the East: when the student is ready, the teacher appears. But I wonder if a deeper truth is this: when the teacher is ready, the students appear. Dolores spent decades becoming ready, and the students came, in their thousands, from every continent, in every language. So what do we do with this story? We are not all called to write 17 books. We are not all called to develop a healing technique that reaches the corners of the earth. But we are all called at some point to make a choice. The choice between stopping when we hear no and finding another way. The choice between believing that our past defines us and trusting that our future is still being written. The choice between waiting for someone to open a door and building one ourselves. Dolores Cannon once said that the most important thing she could do was share information. Not convert anyone, not convince anyone. Just share what she had found and let people make their own minds. Perhaps that is the most generous thing any of us can do. To share what we have learned, to tell the truth as we see it, and then to trust that whoever needs to hear it will. The woman who built her own door, the teacher who learned in silence, the Navy wife who became a voice for millions. Her story is not finished, because every person who hears it and decides, quietly, to keep going is part of the legacy now. And you? What door are you building? If this story touched something in you today, if you've ever felt like giving up on something that mattered, maybe now is the time to keep going. Maybe the door you're building is closer than you think. If you'd like, leave a comment. What door are you building right now? I'd love to read your story. And if you believe that the quiet, persistent ones are the ones who change the world, perhaps you'd like to stay a while. Subscribe to Moments of Peace. There are more stories like this waiting for you. Until next time, keep building.